All right, so you've been digging into the world of manufacturing cost estimators. Lots of research going on, RoleCatcher, career guides, all that good stuff. It sounds like you're really serious about this career path.
Definitely a smart move. This role, it's essential, and it's only getting more important in manufacturing today.
People probably think it's all about being a math whiz, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it's way more than just being good with numbers.
So, what's the biggest misconception? What do people often miss about manufacturing cost estimators?
It's about being a financial detective. They have to look at everything that goes into the cost of making something. Every single factor.
Okay, walk me through some of those factors. What are we talking about here?
Well, you've got your raw materials, of course, and those prices. They can be all over the place. Then there's labor costs. Those are changing constantly, especially with more automation coming in. Oh, and don't even get me started on shipping and logistics.
Right, because of all the supply chain issues.
Exactly. Those supply chain disruptions can really throw a wrench in the works.
I was going to say, hold on, you just used another one of those industry terms, supply chain disruptions. I bet people hear that phrase all the time, but might not really get what it means.
It's anything that messes with getting those materials, from where they start to where they end up and all the steps in between.
Like a big traffic jam, but for materials?
Pretty much. Think global pandemic, shutting down factories. Or remember that ship that got stuck in the canal a while back? That's a big one. Even something like a sudden huge demand for a certain type of computer chip, all that throws things off, causes delays, prices go up, and a manufacturing cost estimator, they've got to see it coming, or at least try to.
Sounds like you need a crystal ball for this job.
Sometimes it feels that way.
No wonder this job is in such high demand.
Absolutely. And with technology changing so fast and all the unexpected things happening in the world, it's only going to get more important.
So let's be real. What are the pros and cons here? It's clearly a job that's needed, but what's the real deal for someone considering this path?
Well, job security is a big one. Companies need good people in this role. And with that, usually comes a good salary. Plus, lots of room to grow, to move up.
I imagine you could specialize too, right?
Definitely, you could become an expert in a specific industry, like pharmaceuticals or aerospace. Or even go into consulting, helping different companies.
Lots of options.
But it's not always easy. We've talked about how complex it can be. It can also be really stressful. Tight deadlines, pressure to save money, unexpected problems popping up all the time.
So, not a job for someone who can't handle a little chaos.
You need to be able to think on your feet, that's for sure.
What about skills? I know we said it's more than just math, but what else do you need to succeed? What should someone be working on if they're thinking about this career?
Math is up there, for sure. But RoleCatcher, they did some data analysis, and it turns out that critical thinking skills are just as important as math skills for this role.
Interesting. Both are equally important.
Yep, 61% for both, according to their research. You've got to be able to look at data, analyze it, and solve problems. Things change quickly in the real world, and you have to adapt.
So you're not just crunching numbers in a vacuum, you're using them to make decisions.
Exactly. And you have to explain those decisions sometimes to people who don't live in the world of numbers. Engineers, managers, they need to understand why you're recommending what you're recommending.
So communication is a big deal.
Huge. You're the bridge between the finance people and the people actually making the product. You might have to tell an engineer, look, I know this material seems cheaper, but in the long run, it's going to cost us more. And you have to explain why.
That's fascinating. So you're like a detective, an accountant, and a diplomat all rolled into one.
You're getting the picture. And it's getting even more interesting and more complex with automation and AI becoming more common.
So automation and AI, that's got to be a big one for manufacturing cost estimators.
It changes everything, really. Imagine you're a cost estimator, and suddenly your company's thinking about replacing a whole bunch of workers with robots.
Wow. That's a big decision. And I bet the costs involved are huge.
Huge is an understatement. And that's where you come in as the expert. You have to analyze the costs of both options, the humans and the robots.
So you're looking at the upfront costs of the robots, which I'm guessing is a lot.
Oh, yeah. Industrial robots. Not cheap. You've got the initial investment, the installation, programming, all the maintenance. It adds up fast.
And then you've got to compare that to the costs of employing people, wages, benefits, all of that.
Right. But it's more than just comparing two lists of numbers. You have to think about the efficiency of each option, too. How productive will each one be?
Okay, so how do you even begin to measure that efficiency and productivity?
Well, robots, they can usually work faster and longer than people. More precision, too. no breaks, no getting tired, and they don't make mistakes if they're programmed right.
That right there sounds like a lot of cost savings.
It can be, but there's always a but, isn't there?
That's the downside.
What about the people? You can't just ignore the possibility of job losses when you're talking about automation. It's a big deal.
So you're not just crunching numbers, you're weighing the ethical implications too.
Exactly. You have to be able to show both sides to the decision makers, the financial side, and the human side. It's a lot of responsibility.
Sounds like it. Almost like you become an advisor, helping companies make really complicated choices.
That's a good way to put it. And it's only going to get more complex, I think. As automation and AI become even more prevalent, manufacturing cost estimators, they're going to have to become experts in those areas too.
So not just knowing how to calculate the costs, but understanding the technology itself.
Right. You might even be involved in deciding which technologies a company should invest in based on your cost analysis and what kind of return on investment they can expect.
Wow, that's a whole other level. It's not just being a numbers person anymore. It's about understanding the big picture of how manufacturing is changing.
Exactly. It's a challenging field, but it's exciting,
Yeah.
especially if you're someone who likes to learn new things and isn't afraid of a little change. And speaking of navigating change, let's talk about RoleCatcher for a minute. You've been checking out their platform. What are your thoughts?
I'm glad you brought that up. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed. It's more than just a job board. That AI-powered resume builder they have is really something else. Instead of just sending your resume out randomly, RoleCatcher actually looks at job descriptions, and it uses this thing called natural language processing.
NLP.
Have you heard of that? I feel like it's one of those tech terms everyone throws around, but I'm not always sure I understand what it actually does.
It's basically a way for computers to understand human language,
Yeah.
like really understand it. So with RoleCatcher, they're using these algorithms and they're reading those job descriptions, figuring out the important skills and keywords that the employers are looking for.
So it's like having a robot recruiter reading those job descriptions for you and highlighting the important parts.
Pretty much. And get this, then it compares your resume to those keywords, those skills, and it tells you how well you match up.
Okay, that's pretty smart. No more guessing if you're using the right words on your resume.
Exactly. And that's just one piece of what they offer. They also have this huge library of practice interview questions, which is obviously super helpful for someone getting ready for a manufacturing cost estimator interview.
It's like it's reading between the lines, finding the things you wouldn't even think about.
That's a good way to put it. And those practice interview questions, those are really something, not just general stuff. These are tailored for manufacturing cost estimators.
So no more, tell me about your biggest weakness.
Nope. More like, okay, how would you go about estimating the cost of a whole new production line for, let's say, this specific type of product? Or remember a time when something unexpected happened, threw everything off, and you had to adjust a cost estimate? Tell me about it. Those kinds of questions really makes you think on your feet.
I bet it gets at how you solve problems, how you handle pressure.
Exactly. And here's the best part. They have this AI thing that analyzes your answers to those practice questions, gives you feedback.
Wait, really? So you practice your answers and the AI tells you how you're doing?
Yep. You can type them in or even record yourself answering. And the AI looks at how clear you are, how concise, even the tone of your answers.
Wow. It's like having a robot career coach in your pocket. That could be a game changer for someone who gets nervous in interviews.
Global, you get to practice, get that feedback, build your confidence up.
This is amazing. The more we talk about RoleCatcher, the more I'm thinking everyone should be checking this out.
It's the future, right? AI, it's changing everything.
So we've talked a lot about the technical stuff, the skills, the AI, but I want to go back to something we discussed earlier, something that's really important. Those tough decisions about automation. Manufacturing cost estimators, they're right in the middle of that.
Can't escape it, really. And as we said, it's not just about finding the cheapest way to do something. It's about understanding the consequences of those choices.
It's the human side of things.
Exactly. Balancing the bottom line with what's best for people, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders.
No doubt. It's a challenging field, but it's also an important one.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. Manufacturing, it's changing every day. Technology, globalization, it all plays a role.
So much to keep track of. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, that's for sure. For anyone listening who might be feeling overwhelmed by all this talk of robots and AI and the future of manufacturing, what's the one thing you hope they take away from this?
Don't be afraid of change. Manufacturing is full of opportunities, but you got to be ready to adapt, to learn new things, and you can't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. And hey, with tools like RoleCatcher out there to help, there's no reason why you can't succeed in this field.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Embrace the change, see the opportunities, and don't be afraid to dive in head first. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope you learned a lot about this essential role in the ever-changing world of manufacturing. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep on learning.